Now, that creates a bit of a disconnect in day-to-day usability, and some of the functional quirks are hard to ignore. And honestly, this car really surprised me. In terms of cabin quietness, it absolutely crushes the XPeng G6. If you're going to wrap anything in leather, shouldn't it be the spot people actually touch the most? I took this corner at around 90 kilometers an hour and I didn't need to make any mid-corner corrections. But in a car with manual doors, yeah, it just feels awkward. But the driving experience, that really caught me off guard, in the best way. And hey, before you click off, I've got a little bonus for you. I brought along a magnet to do some good old-fashioned material detective work. It's a small detail, but it makes a big difference in terms of long-term ergonomics. But honestly, even if you could get it, there's one big flaw that might make you think twice. I don't know which genius came up with that design, but it's definitely one of those "what were they thinking" moments. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This week I stopped by the Zeekr dealer once again to check out something that might fly under the radar but actually carries a ton of weight for the brand. This right here is the Zeekr X, their smallest and very first all-electric SUV. It originally launched back in April 2023 and started deliveries in June that same year, so it's been on the road for a solid 2 years now. And on the surface, yeah, it might not look all that flashy or groundbreaking, but don't let that fool you, because this car plays a surprisingly important role within the Geely group. See, both the Smart Number 1 and the Volvo EX30, two compact EVs you've probably heard of, are actually built on the same C platform as this Zeekr X. So you could say this was the original blueprint for what Geely had planned for the global compact EV market. And it totally makes sense, because Zeekr built this car for Europe. In fact, when I was traveling solo through Amsterdam last year, I stumbled across a Zeekr store right in the middle of the city, and there it was, this very model on display. Now, here's why I say this car wasn't made with Chinese customers in mind. In China, people love big cars, like the bigger the better. That's why Zeekr's 001 is this massive beast, 5 meters long, 2 meters wide. If their goal was to win over the Chinese market with their first SUV, they probably would have gone with something more like the Zeekr 7X, not this tidy little city-friendly crossover. Since this is one of Zeekr's earlier models, you'll notice that the front end actually shares a lot of DNA with the Zeekr 001. It still rocks that signature Lynk Co family look with these floss pick shaped daytime running lights. Definitely not the full width light bar setup we've been seeing on the newer 7X or 7 GT. Now, in terms of size, the Zeekr X is super restrained, especially by EV standards. The Chinese spec car is 4,450 millimeters long, 1,836 wide, and 1,572 tall, with a 2,750 millimeter wheelbase. So it's not trying to be anything oversized. For a compact SUV, the Zeekr X actually comes off pretty aggressive up front. There's this pronounced nose that sticks out, and the hood bulges up on both sides, kind of giving off some American muscle car vibes, honestly. Down low, it looks like there's no active grille, but don't be fooled, it's tucked inside that lower intake. That's one of the major differences between this and the newer Zeekr 7X or 7 GT. Right in the middle of the intake grille, you've got a 3-dimensional millimeter wave radar sensor, and just above the license plate, there's a forward-facing camera for the full 360-degree surround view system. The front bumper also has these air channel cutouts on both sides to help improve overall aerodynamic efficiency. Now, the actual headlight units sit just below those floss pick style DRLs, and inside the cluster there are 2 separate beams, one for low beam and one for high. And if you're wondering about sensors, yeah, that's where things get interesting. There's no LiDAR on the roof, no cameras on the front fenders, no side cams on the B-pillars either, just one camera under each side mirror for the bird's eye view. So clearly this car doesn't support any kind of advanced driver assistance system at a high level. And that kind of makes sense. During the development phase of this car, Geely was still trying to decide whether to keep working with Israel's Mobileye or switch to their own in-house autonomous driving solution. And in order to avoid delays, they just skipped putting any of that hardware on this car altogether. Eventually, after the X launched, Zeekr ended their partnership with Mobileye and fully committed to their own self-driving tech. This car comes equipped with Gitti Control P10 tires from Gitti, which is actually positioned as a high-end sporty tire, focused on comfort, low noise and handling performance. All four corners are running 235 by 55 R18 tires. Now, if you go for the all-wheel drive version, things change a bit. The wheels bump up an inch to 19s, but the tire size stays the same in width, still 235, but with a lower sidewall profile. That reduction in sidewall thickness should give you just a tiny bit more precision when it comes to handling, even though the contact patch itself doesn't grow. Suspension-wise, we've got McPherson up front and multi-link in the rear. Peeking through the front wheel well, you'll see the upper portion of the suspension is made from stamped steel. If you crawl underneath and take a look at the lower control arm, same story, stamped steel. But interestingly, the steering knuckle is aluminum. So what you're looking at here is a steel-aluminum hybrid suspension setup. Out back, everything looks like stamped steel at first glance. But after digging into the spec sheet, turns out the rear suspension is also a mixed material design. The upper control arm is aluminum, while the rest of the links are stamped steel. So while it might not scream premium at first glance, there is some smart material use going on, balancing cost, strength, and a bit of weight savings where it counts. As for how this suspension setup actually feels on the road, well, we'll save that for the test drive at the end of the video. Stick around because I've got a lot of thoughts coming on that. Around back, the Zeekr X keeps that same bold, angular design language. Definitely a unique look with sharp lines that give it a bit of character. Down at the bottom of the rear bumper, there's an aerodynamic trim piece that adds a sporty touch above the license plate. Not much going on, just your standard plate lighting. No tailgate switch here, which is actually a good thing. You don't have to bend way down to open the trunk like you do on something like the Xpeng G6. Instead, the rear view camera for the 360-degree system is mounted right in the center of the tailgate. It sticks out a little more than I expected, kind of awkward visually, but the plus side is it's less likely to get covered in road grime. Now, the tailgate release button is located just under the Zeekr lettering, and I think that's a great spot. It's easy to see, easy to reach, no need to go hunting around the bumper like on some cars. And above that, there's a teeny tiny rear wiper blade on the rear glass. It's comically short, feels more symbolic than functional honestly. In an era where a lot of brands are going with fully hidden rear wipers, this little guy just kind of hangs out there looking a bit funny. Popping open the tailgate, the trunk isn't exactly cavernous. You're looking at about 765 millimeters of depth, 985 in width, and around 650 millimeters tall. Honestly, for a car of this size, that's perfectly reasonable. But here's the thing, it's bare bones back here. You've got one tiny light over on the right, a little hook on each side, and that's it. Nothing fancy, no clever storage tricks, no power outlets, nada. And it's kind of a missed opportunity because there are these recessed pockets on either side that would be perfect for a little mesh netting. Toss in a couple cargo pouches and boom, instant usability upgrade. But nope, Zeekr didn't bother with that. Now, if you lift up the cargo floor, there is a small hidden storage space underneath. Handy, right? Well, here comes the big but. This cargo cover is massive, and once you lift it up, there's nowhere to hold it in place. So if you want to grab anything underneath, you're stuck holding it up with one hand. Super annoying if you're also juggling bags or gear. And if you're thinking, okay, I'll just take the whole panel out so I can stack more stuff. Sorry, not happening. The panel is permanently hinged to the trunk floor. You can't remove it. It just kind of eats into the already limited space and doesn't offer much flexibility. That said, it's not all bad. The divider panel itself can actually fold down and attach to the back of the rear seats using built-in Velcro. So if you don't need it to cover up your valuables, you can fold it down and open up the trunk a bit more. It's a small win in an otherwise very tight space. There's also a little recessed tray built into the top of the cargo divider. It's not huge, but it's super handy for tossing in small items like a pack of tissues, a book, maybe an umbrella. Just the kind of stuff you want easy access to without it sliding all over the place. Oh, and one little bonus, there are two handy hooks on the inside of the tailgate, great for hanging grocery bags or just holding on to little things until you've figured out where to stash them. And of course, if you need more space back here, you can fold down the rear seat backs. That opens things up nicely and extends the usable length of the trunk to about 1,500 millimeters. All right, we've checked out the rear trunk. Now let's see if this thing has a frunk. And yep, it does, but it's tiny, like really tiny. The space measures about 40 centimeters long, 23 wide, and at the deepest point, maybe 15 centimeters. So yeah, we're talking roughly the size of a 20-liter backpack. It's perfect for stashing small stuff you don't use often, or even a pair of shoes, honestly. That way you don't have to worry about your sneakers stinking up the cabin. Bonus points to Zeekr here, they actually added sound deadening insulation under the hood. It's nice to see, and not something every automaker includes in this area. That padding helps muffle any rattles or squeaks that might come from whatever you've thrown in the frunk during a drive. Now let's take a look at the charge port. On the Zeekr X, it's located on the left side, and the first thing you'll notice is this charge port door is massive. I mean, this is the smallest car we've reviewed on the channel, but it's rocking the biggest charge port flap. It's honestly kind of hilarious. Feels like a bit of an overkill. And from what I've seen, the international version of the Zeekr X comes with a totally normal flap, just a compact horizontal one like you'd expect. So this giant hinged panel on the Chinese spec version, yeah, I have no idea what the design team was thinking. Inside, there's a button to close the port, but heads up, it's not the Zeekr logo. It's actually that little upward pointing arrow tucked up in the top right corner. Pretty easy to miss at first, especially since it's not anywhere near the charging connectors. The Zeekr X doesn't use pop-out door handles like a lot of other EVs. Instead, it goes with these recessed ones. And I actually really like this design. All four handles are touch sensitive, so the moment your hand slips inside, the lock is automatically released. From there, you can just pull and open the door effortlessly. It's a smooth, intuitive experience. And honestly, this is all the tech you really need in a door handle. In my opinion, there's no reason to overcomplicate things with power doors or fancy pop-out mechanisms. This setup just works and it feels great to use. Both the front and rear windows are single pane glass, which honestly makes me a little concerned about cabin noise levels, especially wind noise at higher speeds. The rear passengers do get privacy glass though, which is a nice touch. The door panel here is, well, pretty bare bones. It's super minimal. There's basically no decorative trim to speak of, but I've got a few things to nitpick here. First off, the upper section of the door is wrapped in leather, which sounds great, until you look just below it. Right next to the armrest, yep, right where your hand naturally rests, it suddenly switches to hard plastic. Like, why? Who signed off on that? If you're going to wrap anything in leather, shouldn't it be the spot people actually touch the most? Then there's this tiny perforated section on the door panel which looks like it's supposed to let ambient lighting glow through. But the holes are so small, barely anything comes through, even at night. It's one of those, technically it's there, but practically useless kind of features. And lastly, up at the very top of the door, there's a defogger vent for the side window. I already complained about this on the 7X. If you like driving with the windows down, dirt and dust inevitably fall into that vent and there's no way to clean it out. Thankfully, Zeekr seems to have fixed this on the 7GT. And hey, if you're curious about Zeekr's latest GT model, which is the most polished product in Zeekr's entire lineup, click the link in the top right corner. I've got a full video on that one too. And one last thing, there's a pretty weird design choice on the door panel I just have to call out. The door lock switch, it's located way up at the top and pretty far forward. So first of all, it's not exactly easy to reach. You've got to stretch your arm out just to hit the switch. And then once you've unlocked it, you have to pull your hand back toward you to actually push the door open. It's not a natural motion at all, and there's almost no leverage at that forward angle to give the door a good push. My guess? This layout was probably designed around power-operated doors where you wouldn't need to physically push the door open yourself, and in that case, placing the button farther away might actually help avoid accidental presses. But in a car with manual doors, yeah, it just feels awkward. Now, to be fair, the door panel does get one thing right. At least the mechanical door release is easy to spot, so props for that. But The space around it is super tight, like I could barely fit one finger in there to pull it open. Not exactly the most graceful exit. You're kind of just digging in there like you're trying to open a can of soda that's stuck shut. Sliding into the cabin, my first impression is that this car feels like it was designed with female bias in mind. And I mean that in a good way. There are rose gold accents everywhere, not just on the door panels, but also on the steering wheel, including the 2 square buttons and the Zeekr logo itself. It's a really elegant touch. Now, this particular display car comes with a dark interior, which kind of tones things down. But if you pair these accents with the lighter interior option, I imagine it feels super refined and classy. And it's worth pointing out, the interior design here is quite different from other Zeekr models. The layout of the steering wheel, the shape of the driver display, even the seats, they all break away from the more familiar family look. Let's start with the steering wheel. It's pretty minimalist. You've got 2 square buttons on either side and a row of touch-sensitive buttons right underneath the center. From left to right, you've got defrost for the front windshield, central locking, the 360-degree camera view, tailgate release, and rear window defrost. Now, on other Zeekr models, those functions are handled by these giant physical buttons mounted under the main screen. But honestly, I prefer this setup. You can keep your hands on the wheel and access everything quickly. Super convenient. Oh, and tucked behind the steering wheel, there are 2 additional buttons that you can customize to control whatever functions you like. Super handy, and always nice to see that kind of flexibility baked into the user experience. The steering wheel does share one flaw with the rest of the Zeekr lineup. It's just a bit too large. And that becomes a problem because it ends up blocking the view of the shortcut buttons along the left side of the center display. Like from my driving position, I can only really see the button for adjusting the side mirrors. Everything below that, completely hidden. I'll show you what I mean with a quick camera shot. Yeah, not ideal. Behind the driver display, that's the AR head-up display module. Here's the wild part. It doesn't just project navigation or driving info. You can actually use it to watch movies. The center screen is a 14.6-inch LCD. It's fine. Nothing mind-blowing in terms of resolution or brightness. Pretty average overall. Just below it, you've got 2 USB-C ports. And they're surrounded by this white ring. It looks like it should light up, but nope, it doesn't. Purely cosmetic. There's also a round button in the center, which you'd think might do something high-tech, but when you press it, it just pops out a hook. That's it. And below that, you've got a little storage pocket. Now, this center console isn't set up in the usual way. It's actually designed around the higher-end trim. In China, this version of the console can slide forward and back. And get this, there's even an optional fridge you can retrofit into the rear section, but that's only available in the domestic market. From what I've been told, this setup isn't offered overseas at all. I also learned from Zeekr staff that the lower trims can't get the fridge, even as an option, because they're missing the internal wiring needed to support it. But honestly, even if you could get it, there's one big flaw that might make you think twice. The fridge's air vent points directly at the driver's seat. So when it kicks on, the warm exhaust air blasts straight at your lower back. Yeah, not exactly the most refreshing driving experience. I don't know which genius came up with that design, but it's definitely one of those "what were they thinking" moments. Up front on the center console, there's a wireless charging pad framed by a rose gold trim, very on theme for the rest of the interior. To keep that trim from getting scratched up, Zeekr actually added a transparent plastic cover over the front end, which is a nice touch. Just below that, you'll find a sliding cover for the storage compartment. Open it up, and there's a fold-out cup holder inside. When you pop it open, it turns into 2 cup holders. Sounds great, right? Well, kind of. The front one doesn't have any kind of limiter or clamp, so bottles just kind of wobble around. Definitely not ideal if you're driving spiritedly or hit a speed bump. Moving further back, you'll notice something strange. There's no latch or release button for the main center storage box. And that's because there is no latch. You just pull it open, no lock, no button, nothing. The opening itself is actually pretty narrow, but the compartment is deep. And there's even an extra little nook tucked away at the very bottom for more storage. So yeah, surprisingly useful. Oh, and another cool feature, the entire center armrest can lift up that way if you need to slide across, and hop out from the passenger side, you totally can. It's a small thing, but I love it when practicality like that makes its way into a design. The headliner in the Zeekr X is made from a microfiber suede material, which sounds fancy, but in reality, it's pretty average. It definitely doesn't scream premium. In fact, it looks a little cheap up close. Not sure if that comes through on camera, but in person it's noticeable. That said, there is one nice surprise. Just above the driver's side window, you get a sunglasses holder made from the same material. And honestly, that's great. Super handy, always appreciate having one of those. Up front, the reading lights are squared off and use a touch-sensitive slider. You can swipe to adjust brightness or tap to turn them on and off. You can even toggle between two different color temperatures. Nice little bit of polish there. Now, the center rear view mirror is a standard optical one, but rear visibility isn't great. The rear window is pretty small and the rear headrests block a good chunk of your view. It's not unusable, but it will be better if it's digital. The Zeekr X comes standard with a Yamaha sound system across all trims, and you get a total of 13 speakers throughout the cabin. There's no Dolby Atmos support, and the overall audio quality is just kind of average. It doesn't really deliver that hi-fi, rich, immersive sound you might be hoping for. It gets the job done, but if you're an audiophile, this probably won't check your boxes. Let's talk seats. Up front, the Zeekr X comes with sporty style seats for both the driver and passenger. They've got tall side bolsters, so the support and overall wraparound feel is actually quite good. Definitely holds you in place nicely. But here's the catch. Every trim level gets synthetic leather. No real leather options anywhere in the lineup. The material feels a bit stiff and overall comfort is just okay, not bad, but nothing that's gonna wow you on a long road trip. Both front seats are fully power adjustable and you do get heating and ventilation, which is great. Massage though, that's only for the driver. Passenger gets left out on that one. As for the rear seats, yeah, there's nothing. No heating, no ventilation, no reclining, no frills at all. One more thing I noticed with the driver's seat, it doesn't allow for tilt adjustment of the seat cushion. That means you can't angle it upward to support your thighs, which can lead to some discomfort over longer drives. It's a small detail, but it makes a big difference in terms of long-term ergonomics. Up front, headroom is actually really solid. For reference, I'm 1.71 meters tall. With the seat adjusted to its highest position, I've still got just over 10 centimeters of clearance above my head. Drop the seat all the way down, and that number jumps to around 20 centimeters. So yeah, as the driver, headroom is definitely not something you need to worry about. Plenty of space up here. All right, now let's hop into the back seat. The rear door panel layout is pretty much identical to the front, same design, same materials, but it does come with two extra quirks that are worth pointing out. First, the mechanical emergency door release is completely hidden, just like it is on the Zeekr 7X. If you're not already familiar with this car, good luck finding it. In an emergency situation, that's not ideal. Second, the rear windows don't roll all the way down. You only get about 70% of the way there before they stop. So if you're the kind of person who likes a fully open window in the back seat, this might bug you a little. The front seat is set to my normal driving position, and for reference, I'm about 1.71 meters tall. Sitting behind myself, I've still got roughly 20 centimeters of knee room, which is really generous for a car of this size. There's also some decent foot room under the front seats, so I can stretch my legs forward a bit and get into a more relaxed position. That definitely helps overall comfort. Now, the rear seat does have one big drawback. The seat cushion is low, short, and pretty flat. It doesn't offer much support under your thighs, and for longer trips that can get uncomfortable pretty fast. Also, the seat back doesn't recline at all, so you're locked into one angle. Overall, rear seat comfort is just okay. Nothing terrible, but nothing stand out either. Rear headroom isn't exactly generous. There's just a bit over 10 centimeters of clearance above my head. It's enough for someone my height, but definitely on the tighter side. Looking up, there's not much going on, just a pair of reading lights. No grab handles, which is a little surprising. There is a small coat hook on the B-pillar, and down lower, a very hidden air vent. It's so subtle, no chrome trim, no markings, that you could easily miss it and think there's no rear air conditioning at all. Flip down the center armrest and you'll find two cup holders tucked inside. That's nice, but beyond that, there's not much going on back here. I didn't see any USB charging ports for rear passengers, and even the door pockets are tiny. The seat back pockets on the front seats, they're angled, which gives them a bit of flair design-wise, but not a ton of practicality. There are two things that do stand out though. First, you've got a completely flat floor in the back, great for anyone sitting in the middle. And second, the ISOFIX child seat mounts are super easy to access. Always nice to see when a car makes family usability simple. Alright, we've walked through pretty much every inch of the Zeekr X inside and out, so now it's time to hit the road and talk about what it's actually like to ride in and drive this thing. Let's start with the ride quality, and honestly, this car really surprised me. In terms of cabin quietness, it absolutely crushes the Xpeng G6. I hopped into the back seat and asked the Zeekr rep to take us over some rough pavement just to see how it handles NVH. And it was impressive. There was none of that low frequency resonance you get in the G6 where sound bounces around the cargo area like a drum. The Zeekr stayed composed and quiet. Road noise, tire noise, barely noticeable. Even though it only has single pane glass, wind and ambient noise are also very well controlled. It's one of those cases where you're expecting a compact EV to feel a little rough around the edges, and it just doesn't. Even going over speed bumps, the rear seat stayed planted, no bounce, no weird jolts. Overall, ride comfort in the back is definitely a tier above what I felt in the G6. The version I tested was the single motor rear wheel drive model. And the first thing I tried was the one pedal driving mode. Going in, I expected something soft and floaty, like what you get in the Zeekr 7 GT, but nope. Totally different story here. This is actually the strongest one pedal regeneration I've felt in any Chinese EV I've tested so far. It's not quite on Tesla's level, where the deceleration feels almost perfectly one-to-one with pedal input, but it's not far off. In most driving situations, you barely need to touch the brake pedal, just lift off the throttle and the car slows down fast. As for the brakes, well, they're not adjustable like the ones in the 7 GT, so what you get is what you get. The pedal feel is very linear, which I appreciate, but overall braking force, it's just okay. It feels like it's tuned more for daily comfort than spirited driving. There's a softness to the bite, and it didn't exactly inspire a ton of confidence, especially during harder stops. If you're someone who likes to push your car a little towards the edge, or if you're considering the all-wheel drive version with more power and extra weight, I'd recommend upgrading the brake system. Otherwise, you might run into situations where the car just doesn't feel like it wants to slow down fast enough. Steering feel in the Zeekr X is honestly one of its strongest points. The response is super precise. Even though the front suspension is a basic McPherson setup, the tuning here is surprisingly sporty. There's barely any dead zone in the steering, and turn-in is sharp. I took this corner at around 90 kilometers an hour and I didn't need to make any mid-corner corrections, just one smooth input and the car held the line beautifully. Curb weight for the rear-wheel drive version is about 1.85 tons and the all-wheel drive version bumps that up to 1.95. But thanks to the compact size and relatively light weight, especially by EV standards, the Zeekr X never feels heavy or clumsy. It's actually really nimble. Darting through traffic, changing lanes, overtaking, this thing just goes where you point it. Totally unlike the floaty, oversized feeling you get from a lot of other EVs in this class. The chassis tuning here leans on the sporty side, so yeah, it's a bit firm, but not in a bad way. There's a real sense of control and composure to it. It's got that tight, well-damped feeling, plenty of stiffness, but also just enough give to keep things comfortable. When you hit rough patches or go over speed bumps, the body settles immediately. No extra bounce, no float, no weird rebound. The suspension just grabs the car and holds it steady. Now, in terms of power, this single motor rear wheel drive version feels just a little underwhelming to me. You're working with 272 horsepower, which is roughly equivalent to a 2.2 liter turbo gas engine. 0 to 100 kilometers per hour takes about 5.8 seconds. So it's not slow, but it's also not particularly exciting either. In sport mode, the throttle tuning does sharpen up a bit in the first half of the pedal travel, but honestly, it's only a slight difference. Most of the power doesn't really come on until you're pretty deep into the throttle. You've got to push past halfway to really feel the full shove. For daily driving, totally fine. Plenty of power for errands, commuting, even some light fun. But if you're the kind of driver who likes having extra performance on tap, the all-wheel drive version might be more your speed. That one does 0 to 100 in 3.7 seconds, and that definitely makes a difference. So overall, the Zeekr X is a car with very clear strengths and some equally clear weaknesses. The interior, especially in the lower trims, definitely feels like it was designed around a high-spec version and then stripped back. Now, that creates a bit of a disconnect in day-to-day usability, and some of the functional quirks are hard to ignore. But the driving experience, that really caught me off guard in the best way. The ride comfort, the chassis balance, the handling, it's all genuinely impressive for a car this size. If Zeekr can clean up the interior execution and polish a few of the rough edges, this could easily be one of the most well-rounded compact EVs on the market. And that smaller footprint, it makes this thing feel totally at home in tighter city streets, especially in Europe. If what you're after is a fun, nimble electric SUV with personality, I'd take the Zeekr X over the Xpeng G6 any day. Alright, that's gonna wrap it up for this one. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your EV curious friends. I'll see you in the next one. Peace. And hey, before you click off, I've got a little bonus for you. I brought along a magnet to do some good old-fashioned material detective work. Let's check out what the body panels are made of on the Zeekr X and compare it to the Zeekr 001, the 7X, and the 7 GT. Always fun to find out what's steel, what's aluminum, and what's surprise plastic. Let's go poke around.